Chapter 1, Early Life and Family Origins by David Rollason. The House of Windsor stands as a symbol of continuity, tradition, and adaptation, embodying the rich and complex history of Britain. Its lineage traces back to a convergence of dynastic shifts in political necessities, forming a royal house that has weathered wars, social revolutions, and global upheavals. To understand the importance of Queen Elizabeth II and her legacy, one must first delve into the origins and evolution of the House of Windsor, a name that, while relatively modern, carries the weight of centuries of British monarchy. The birth of the Windsor name. The House of Windsor officially came into being in 1917 during the reign of King George V. Prior to this, the royal family was known as the House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, a lineage inherited from Prince Albert, the German-born consort of Queen Victoria. However, the outbreak of World War I and rising anti-German sentiment in Britain created a need for change. As the conflict intensified, the monarchy found itself under increasing pressure to distance itself from its German connections. In response, King George V made the decisive move to rebrand the royal family. On July 17, 1917, he issued a royal proclamation declaring that all descendants of Queen Victoria and Prince Albert would bear the name Windsor. The new name was carefully chosen to reflect British heritage, inspired by Windsor Castle, a historic symbol of royal power and residence dating back to William the Conqueror. This rebranding was more than a symbolic gesture. It was a strategic decision that reinforced the monarchy's alignment with British identity during a time of national crisis. Dynastic roots. From the Tudors to the Hanoverians. While the name Windsor is relatively recent, its roots extend far back into the annals of British history. The current royal family can trace its ancestry through a complex web of European dynasties, with connections to the Tudors, Stuarts, and Hanoverians. Each of these houses played a pivotal role in shaping the monarchy and the nation. The Tudor dynasty, beginning with Henry VII in 1485, marked the end of the Wars of the Roses and the establishment of a stable monarchy. Under the reign of Henry VIII and Elizabeth I, the Tudors oversaw the English Reformation and the expansion of Britain's influence on the global stage. Following the death of Elizabeth I in 1603, the crown passed to the House of Stuart, uniting England and Scotland under a single monarch. The Stuarts, however, faced significant challenges, including the English Civil War and the eventual execution of King Charles I. The monarchy was temporarily abolished, and Britain became a republic under Oliver Cromwell. The restoration of the monarchy in 1660 with Charles II marked a return to stability, but the Glorious Revolution of 1688 led to the ousting of the Catholic King James II and the installation of the Protestant monarchs William III and Mary II. The Act of Settlement in 1701 ensured that only Protestant descendants could inherit the British throne, paving the way for the House of Hanover to assume power in 1714. George I, the first Hanoverian king, was a distant relative of the Stuarts through his grandmother, Elizabeth Stuart, daughter of James I. The Hanoverians would go on to oversee significant events, including the formation of the United Kingdom, the Industrial Revolution, and the expansion of the British Empire. The Saxe-Coburg and Gotha connection. The transition from the House of Hanover to the House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha occurred with the marriage of Queen Victoria to Prince Albert in 1840. Victoria, the last monarch of the Hanoverian line, was deeply devoted to Albert, and their union had far-reaching implications for the monarchy. Their 9 children married into various European royal families, earning Victoria the nickname Grandmother of Europe. When their son Edward VII ascended the throne in 1901, the royal house officially became known as Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. Edward VII's reign marked the beginning of a modern monarchy, adapting to the social and political changes of the early 20th century. However, the Germanic name of the house became increasingly problematic as tensions with Germany escalated, culminating in the decision to adopt the name Windsor. The Windsors and World Wars. The newly established House of Windsor quickly faced some of the most challenging periods in British history. King George V's reign saw the monarchy navigating the complexities of World War I, a time when the royal family's public image became crucial to maintaining national unity. By adopting British customs and engaging with the public, the Windsors solidified their position as a central pillar of British life. George V's successors, Edward VIII and George VI, each played unique roles in the family's ongoing evolution. Edward VIII's brief reign ended in scandal when he abdicated the throne in 1936 to marry Wallis Simpson, an American divorcee. His decision sent shockwaves through the nation and led to the unexpected ascension of his younger brother, George VI. George VI, despite initial doubts about his capability, guided the nation through World War II, becoming a symbol of resilience and courage. Queen Elizabeth II, the modern Windsor. When Queen Elizabeth II ascended the throne in 1952, she inherited not only the legacy of her predecessors, but also the responsibility of leading a nation undergoing rapid change. Her reign witnessed the decolonization of Africa and the Caribbean, the transformation of the British Empire into the Commonwealth, and the technological advancements that reshaped society. Elizabeth's commitment to duty and her ability to adapt to changing times defined her reign. Under her leadership, the House of Windsor continued to evolve, balancing tradition with modernity. She embraced new forms of communication, including televised Christmas broadcasts and social media, to connect with her subjects. The royal family's involvement in charity work, public service, and diplomacy further cemented their relevance in contemporary Britain. The future of the House of Windsor. As the House of Windsor looks to the future, it faces both opportunities and challenges. The reign of King Charles III will test the monarchy's ability to maintain its relevance in a world where public expectations continue to evolve. With Prince William and Prince George positioned as future monarchs, the Windsors are poised to continue their legacy while adapting to the demands of a modern society. The enduring strength of the House of Windsor lies in its ability to reflect the values and aspirations of the nation it serves. From its origins in the dynastic complexities of Europe to its role as a symbol of British identity, the Windsors have proven that the monarchy can endure by embracing change while honoring tradition. As Britain moves forward, the legacy of Queen Elizabeth II and the House of Windsor will remain an integral part of the nation's history and future. A royal birth, 1926. On a chilly spring morning, 21st April 1926, the world quietly welcomed a royal infant who would go on to become Britain's longest reigning monarch. The birth of Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor was an event of understated importance at the time. Yet it set in motion a remarkable journey of leadership and service that would leave an indelible mark on British history. Born during a period of post-war recovery, her arrival signified continuity, hope, and the preservation of a monarchy still adjusting to the shifting tides of the 20th century. Early family life and lineage. Elizabeth was born at 17 Bruton Street, a townhouse in the fashionable district of Mayfair, London. This was not a royal palace or castle, but the home of her maternal grandparents, the Earl and Countess of Strathmore. The location itself reflected her initial position within the royal family, important but not yet destined for the throne. Her father, Prince Albert, Duke of York, was the second son of King George V, making Elizabeth III in line to the throne after her uncle Edward, Prince of Wales, and her father. Her mother, Lady Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, later known as the Queen Mother, played a crucial role in shaping Elizabeth's early character. Known for her warmth, charm, and down-to-earth demeanor, Lady Elizabeth instilled in her daughter a sense of duty balanced with compassion. The combination of a disciplined upbringing and a nurturing environment would later define the leadership style of the young princess. Elizabeth's birth was not accompanied by the grand public celebrations typically seen when a direct heir to the throne is born. Newspapers reported the event, but it did not dominate headlines. In 1926, few could have predicted that this child would one day wear the crown. However, even at birth, Elizabeth carried the weight of generations of royal lineage. Her ancestry traced back to the House of Hanover and included notable monarchs such as Queen Victoria and King George V, both of whom had left significant legacies of expansion and reform. A changing Britain. The world into which Elizabeth was born was one of transition. Britain was emerging from the shadow of World War I, a conflict that had reshaped global politics and left deep economic scars. The British Empire, though still expansive, was beginning to face challenges from within and outside its borders. Domestically, social changes were underway, as women had gained the right to vote, and new technologies such as radio and motor cars were becoming commonplace. The birth of a royal child, particularly one not directly in line to the throne, seemed a small event against the backdrop of such major transformations. Yet Elizabeth's arrival had symbolic significance beyond immediate expectations. The monarchy, having survived the turbulence of war and the abdication crisis yet to come, was an institution under scrutiny. In this context, the birth of a healthy princess to a loving and relatively modern royal couple hinted at the possibility of renewal and stability within the royal family. The royal infant's early years. Elizabeth's early years were spent in the comfort of her family's London residence and their country home in Windsor Great Park. Unlike the strict and formal upbringing experienced by previous generations of royals, her childhood, though privileged, was comparatively relaxed. Her parents were determined to provide a more nurturing and affectionate environment, reflecting the changing attitudes of the time. Known as Lilibet within the family, Elizabeth was a lively and curious child who displayed an early sense of responsibility. Her close relationship with her younger sister, Princess Margaret, who was born in 1930, provided companionship and camaraderie. Despite their differing personalities, Elizabeth being more serious and Margaret more spirited, the sisters shared a bond that would remain strong throughout their lives. Elizabeth's early education was overseen by her governess, Marion Crawford, affectionately known as Crawfie. Under her guidance, Elizabeth studied history, literature, languages, and religion. Unlike many children of her status, she was not sent to boarding school, but was educated at home, reflecting the traditional approach of the royal family. However, her education was not limited to academics. From a young age, she was exposed to the responsibilities of royal life, accompanying her parents on public engagements and observing their interactions with dignitaries in the public. The unexpected heir. At the time of her birth, Elizabeth's future appeared relatively ordinary by royal standards. As the daughter of the Duke of York, she was expected to live a life of public service, but not one destined for the throne. Her uncle Edward, Prince of Wales, was the presumptive heir, and his future children would likely continue the line of succession. However, fate would intervene in ways that no one could have foreseen. In 1936, when Elizabeth was just 10 years old, King George V passed away, and her uncle became King Edward VIII. His reign, however, was short-lived. The king's desire to marry Wallis Simpson, an American divorcee, led to a constitutional crisis. Faced with opposition from the government and the Church of England, Edward abdicated the throne, an unprecedented decision that reshaped the royal lineage. With Edward's abdication, Elizabeth's father became King George VI, thrusting her into the position of heir presumptive. Overnight, her life changed, and with it, the expectations placed upon her. No longer the daughter of a secondary royal, Elizabeth now stood as the future queen. Her parents, recognizing the significance of this development, began preparing her for the monumental role she would one day assume, a symbol of hope and continuity. Elizabeth's birth may not have been a national spectacle at the time, but in retrospect, it marked the beginning of a new chapter for the monarchy. As Britain faced the uncertainties of the 20th century, from global conflicts to decolonization and social change, she would emerge as a symbol of stability and continuity. Her ability to adapt to changing circumstances, a trait nurtured from a young age, would prove essential in her future reign. The significance of her birth lies not only in her eventual role as queen, but in the values and experiences she absorbed during her formative years. These early influences shaped the monarch who would lead Britain through eras of triumph and tribulation, embodying a balance of tradition and modernity that ensured the survival of the British monarchy in an ever-evolving world. In the grand scheme of British history, the arrival of Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor was more than just the birth of a royal child. It was the quiet beginning of a reign that would redefine what it meant to be a monarch in the modern age, a princess in the making. Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor, affectionately known as Lilibet within the royal family, spent her formative years under the watchful eyes of her loving parents, the Duke and Duchess of York. From an early age, Elizabeth exhibited a natural poise, responsibility, and an inquisitive mind, qualities that would later define her reign as Britain's monarch. Her childhood, though privileged, was marked by a careful balance of royal traditions, academic pursuits, and lessons in public service. These early experiences laid the foundation for the life of duty and dedication that awaited her. A secure and affectionate upbringing. Born on 21st April 1926, Elizabeth was raised in a relatively secure and loving environment, a stark contrast to the strict and formal upbringing typical of earlier royal generations. Her parents, particularly her mother, Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, the future Queen Mother, were determined to provide their daughters with a sense of normality within the confines of royal life. The Duchess of York was known for her warmth and kindness, and she fostered a close relationship with both Elizabeth and her younger sister, Princess Margaret. The family divided their time between their London residence at 145 Piccadilly and the more relaxed surroundings of Royal Lodge in Windsor Great Park. The country home provided Elizabeth with a chance to explore nature, play outdoors, and interact with animals, a passion that would stay with her throughout her life. Her early years were also filled with simple pleasures, such as playing with her beloved corgis, engaging in games with her sister, and riding horses, an activity she took to with natural skill. Despite her royal status, Elizabeth's childhood was relatively sheltered from the public eye. Her parents shielded her from the demands of royal duties, allowing her to grow up in a supportive and nurturing environment. However, the expectations of her future role were never far away, and her upbringing subtly prepared her for the responsibilities that lay ahead. Early education and development. Elizabeth's education began at home, in keeping with the tradition of aristocratic families at the time. Her governess, Marion Crawford, affectionately known as Crawfie, played a crucial role in her early development. Under Crawfie's guidance, Elizabeth and Margaret received lessons in subjects such as history, geography, literature, and music. Elizabeth was a diligent and attentive student, known for her curiosity and strong sense of discipline. Crawfie later described Elizabeth as a child who displayed a strong sense of responsibility, even in her studies. She showed an early interest in constitutional matters and would later recall her father explaining the workings of government and the role of the monarchy. This early exposure to the structure of British governance planted the seeds for her future role as a constitutional monarch. Elizabeth's education extended beyond academics. Her parents ensured that she developed practical skills, including sewing, cooking, and horsemanship. Her love for animals, particularly horses and dogs, became a defining aspect of her character. She began riding at the age of 4, and her natural ability was evident from the start. This passion would later evolve into a lifelong involvement in equestrian activities, including breeding and racing horses. A growing awareness of duty. Although Elizabeth's early years were primarily focused on family and education, she gradually became aware of her unique position and the responsibilities that came with it. Her first taste of public life came at the age of 6, when she accompanied her parents on a visit to the Royal Naval College in Dartmouth. Though the visit was informal, it marked the beginning of her gradual introduction to royal duties. By the time she was 10 years old, Elizabeth's life changed dramatically with the abdication crisis of 1936. Her uncle, King Edward VIII, abdicated the throne to marry Wallis Simpson, an American divorcee, thrusting her father into the role of King George VI and elevating Elizabeth to heir presumptive. This sudden shift in her status meant that her education and upbringing would take on a new sense of urgency, as she was now being prepared for a potential future as queen. The influence of her parents, King George VI and Queen Elizabeth, were instrumental in shaping their daughter's sense of duty and dedication. Despite her father's initial reluctance to assume the throne, he quickly embraced his role and set an example of service and responsibility that deeply influenced Elizabeth. He believed in leading by example, demonstrating the importance of hard work, integrity, and humility. Her mother, meanwhile, provided emotional support and instilled in Elizabeth the importance of connecting with the people she would one day serve. The Queen Mother's warmth and approachability were qualities that Elizabeth would later emulate during her own public engagements. Together, her parents formed a powerful influence, teaching her to balance the demands of public life with a genuine concern for the well-being of others. Wartime experiences. Elizabeth's early responsibilities expanded significantly during World War II. As Britain faced the horrors of war, the young princess began to take on more visible roles. In 1940, at the age of 14, she made her first public address on the BBC's Children's Hour, reassuring children who had been evacuated from their homes. Her calm and comforting words demonstrated a maturity beyond her years and marked the beginning of her role as a figure of stability and reassurance. In 1942, she was appointed Colonel of the Grenadier Guards, marking her first official military role. She took this position seriously, frequently visiting the regiment and showing her support for the troops. As the war progressed, Elizabeth continued to assume more responsibilities. In 1945, she joined the Auxiliary Territorial Service, ATS, where she trained as a driver and mechanic. This hands-on experience was significant as it demonstrated her willingness to contribute to the war effort alongside her fellow citizens. Her involvement in the ATS was symbolic of the monarchy's connection to the people during a time of national crisis. It also marked a shift in how the royal family was perceived, with Elizabeth emerging as a relatable and dedicated member of society. Her wartime service was an early indication of the strong work ethic and sense of duty that would define her reign, preparing for the future. As Elizabeth entered her late teens, her preparation for future responsibilities intensified. She began accompanying her parents on official visits, observing their interactions with dignitaries and the public. These experiences provided valuable lessons in diplomacy, public speaking, and the importance of maintaining the monarchy's image. Her training also included studying constitutional history and law under the guidance of Henry Martin, the Vice Provost of Eton College. This specialized education ensured that she understood the complexities of the British political system and her future role within it. By the time she turned 21, Elizabeth had already demonstrated her readiness to assume greater responsibilities. A princess poised for leadership. Elizabeth's childhood and early education were marked by a careful balance of nurturing love, disciplined training, and exposure to public service. The lessons she learned during these formative years, from the importance of duty to the value of compassion, would guide her throughout her life. As she prepared to take on the role of monarch, she embodied the qualities of resilience, empathy, and leadership that would define her reign. The young princess, once sheltered from the burdens of royal life, was now poised to become one of the most influential figures in British history. Her journey from a curious and responsible child to a capable and determined heir was a testament to the careful planning and guidance she received. Little did the world know, the princess in the making would soon become the queen who would reign over a nation for more than 7 decades. The abdication crisis, 1936. In December 1936, the British monarchy faced one of its greatest constitutional crises, a crisis that would forever alter the trajectory of young Princess Elizabeth's life and reshape the future of the nation. King Edward VIII's decision to abdicate the throne in order to marry Wallis Simpson, an American divorcee, was not only a scandal that shook the royal family, but also a pivotal event that unexpectedly placed Elizabeth in direct line for the crown. What began as a personal controversy soon became a national and international spectacle, with far-reaching implications for the monarchy and the young princess who would one day inherit it. The rise of King Edward VIII. Edward, the eldest son of King George V and Queen Mary, ascended the throne in January 1936, following the death of his father. Handsome, charming, and popular, Edward was seen as a modern and charismatic figure who could potentially revitalize the monarchy. However, beneath his public appeal lay a man whose personal life would prove incompatible with the duties of kingship. Edward had long been known for his romantic entanglements, often with women deemed unsuitable by royal and societal standards. By the time he became king, he was deeply involved with Wallis Simpson, a twice-divorced American woman. Their relationship, which had initially been kept out of the public eye, soon became a source of concern for the royal family, the Church of England, and the British government. As the head of the Church of England, Edward was expected to uphold the Church's teachings, which at the time did not recognize remarriage after divorce if the former spouse was still living. Marrying Wallis would place him in direct conflict with the Church's principles and the expectations of his role as monarch. The British government, led by Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin, made it clear that Edward's proposed marriage was unacceptable and could not be supported. The abdication decision. Faced with mounting pressure from his government, the Church, and his family, Edward found himself at a crossroads. He was determined to marry Wallis, yet doing so would mean sacrificing his position as king. The decision to abdicate was not made lightly, but by December 1936, it became clear that Edward was unwilling to relinquish his relationship with Wallace. On 10th of December 1936, Edward signed the instrument of abdication, formally renouncing the throne. The following day, his younger brother Albert, Duke of York, became King George VI. In his farewell address to the nation, broadcast on the radio, Edward famously declared, "I have found it impossible to carry the heavy burden of responsibility and to discharge my duties as king as I would wish, to do without the help and support of the woman I love." The abdication marked the first time in British history that a monarch voluntarily stepped down, creating shockwaves throughout the nation and beyond. Many viewed Edward's actions as a betrayal of duty, while others admired his decision to follow his heart. Regardless of public opinion, the consequences of the abdication were profound, both for the monarchy and for the young Princess Elizabeth. A new king and a new heir. With King Edward VIII's departure, Albert reluctantly assumed the role of King George VI. Shy, reserved, and plagued by a speech impediment, George VI was initially seen as an unlikely king. However, he would go on to earn the respect and admiration of his subjects by leading Britain through the tumultuous years of World War II and beyond. For Elizabeth, the abdication was a turning point. Prior to 1936, she had been a relatively carefree child, enjoying her early years with her sister, Princess Margaret, and living under the assumption that her uncle would produce heirs who would continue the royal line. Her father's unexpected ascension to the throne changed everything. As the elder daughter of King George VI, Elizabeth was now heir presumptive, meaning she would become queen if her parents did not produce a male heir. Although she was only 10 years old at the time, Elizabeth's life was immediately transformed by this new reality. Her education and upbringing took on a more serious tone, as she was now being prepared for a future that could involve ruling the nation. Her governess, Marion Crawford, recalled how Elizabeth's sense of duty seemed to sharpen after the abdication, as if she instinctively understood the weight of the responsibilities that lay ahead. The impact on Elizabeth's family life. The abdication not only affected Elizabeth's future, but also had a profound impact on her family dynamic. Her father, King George VI, was thrust into a role he had not anticipated, and the stress of kingship weighed heavily on him. Despite his initial reluctance, George VI rose to the occasion, supported by his wife, Queen Elizabeth, who became known as the Queen Mother. Together, they created a close-knit and supportive family environment that helped them navigate the challenges of the monarchy. For Elizabeth, watching her father's dedication to duty and his ability to overcome personal challenges served as a powerful example. She observed how he balanced the demands of public service with his role as a father, instilling in her a strong work ethic and a deep sense of responsibility. Her mother's warmth and resilience further shaped Elizabeth's character, teaching her the importance of compassion and empathy in leadership. A new vision for the monarchy. The abdication crisis also had lasting implications for the way the monarchy was perceived by the public and how future monarchs would approach their roles. Edward VIII's decision to prioritize personal desires over duty was seen as a failure of leadership, but it also highlighted the need for a monarch who could embody stability and continuity. King George VI's reign helped restore public confidence in the monarchy, and his daughters played a role in this rehabilitation. Elizabeth and Margaret became symbols of the modern royal family, engaging with the public and demonstrating a relatable human side. Elizabeth, in particular, was seen as a steady and reliable presence, qualities that would later define her reign as queen. The long-term consequences. Had Edward VIII not abdicated, Elizabeth's life would have taken a very different path. She may have remained a minor royal, fulfilling ceremonial duties without the weight of the crown on her shoulders. Instead, the abdication set her on a course that would lead to her becoming one of the most iconic and enduring monarchs in British history. The abdication also shaped Elizabeth's understanding of the delicate balance between personal life and public duty. She witnessed firsthand the consequences of placing personal desires above the responsibilities of kingship, a lesson that would influence her unwavering commitment to duty throughout her reign. Elizabeth's role during World War II. A young princess contributing to the war effort. The outbreak of World War II in September 1939 marked a period of immense uncertainty and challenge for Britain and its people. For the young Princess Elizabeth, who was just 13 years old at the time, the war presented an opportunity to step beyond the protective confines of royal life and play a meaningful role in the nation's struggle for survival. Although initially sheltered from the dangers of war, Elizabeth's contribution grew steadily as the conflict progressed, reflecting her early sense of duty and foreshadowing the steadfast leadership that would later define her reign. Evacuation to Windsor. As bombs fell on London during the Blitz, concerns over the safety of the royal family mounted. Many children were evacuated to the countryside or abroad to escape the danger. Some suggested that Princess Elizabeth and her younger sister, Princess Margaret, should be sent to Canada for their protection. However, Queen Elizabeth, later the Queen Mother, firmly rejected the idea, declaring, "The children won't go without me. I won't leave without the king. And the king will never leave." This statement embodied the royal family's commitment to staying in Britain, standing as a symbol of resilience for the nation. Instead, Elizabeth and Margaret were relocated to Windsor Castle, away from the immediate threat of air raids in London, but still close enough to remain connected to the capital and the war effort. At Windsor, the young princesses lived a relatively sheltered life, but were not isolated from the realities of the war. They regularly participated in air raid drills and witnessed the impact of the conflict through the experiences of those around them. The iconic broadcast, Children's Hour. Elizabeth's first major public contribution to the war effort came in 1940 when she made her radio debut on the BBC's Children's Hour. At just 14 years old, she delivered a speech aimed at reassuring children who had been evacuated from their homes and separated from their families. Speaking in a calm and composed manner, she addressed her young listeners with empathy and encouragement. "We are trying to do all we can to help our gallant sailors, soldiers, and airmen, and we are trying, too, to bear our own share of the danger and sadness of war. We know, every one of us, that in the end, all will be well." The broadcast was widely praised for its warmth and sincerity, with many listeners drawing comfort from the princess's words. It marked the beginning of her public role in boosting national morale, a role she would continue to fulfill throughout the war. Visits to troops and charitable activities. As Elizabeth grew older, her involvement in the war effort expanded. Accompanied by her parents and sister, she visited military hospitals, factories, and regiments to boost the morale of soldiers and civilians alike. These visits provided her with first-hand insight into the sacrifices being made by ordinary citizens and members of the armed forces. Elizabeth also became involved in charitable initiatives aimed at supporting those affected by the war. She participated in fundraising events and worked with organizations such as the Girl Guides, where she was a member of the first Buckingham Palace Company. The group focused on community service projects, including knitting garments for soldiers and making care packages for those on the front lines. These activities helped Elizabeth develop a sense of empathy and responsibility that would later influence her approach to public service. They also strengthened her connection to the British people, many of whom viewed her as a symbol of hope and continuity during a time of national upheaval. Joining the Auxiliary Territorial Service, ATS. Perhaps the most significant chapter of Elizabeth's wartime contribution began in 1945, when she joined the Auxiliary Territorial Service, ATS, the women's branch of the British Army. At the age of 18, she became the first female member of the royal family to serve in the armed forces as an active participant rather than merely a figurehead. After undergoing basic training, Elizabeth specialized in vehicle maintenance and driving, earning the rank of second subaltern. Her training included lessons in mechanics, map reading, and first aid. She learned to drive and maintain a variety of military vehicles, from jeeps to ambulances and trucks. Photographs of the young princess in military uniform, covered in grease and working on engines, were widely circulated and became iconic images of her commitment to the war effort. Elizabeth's service in the ATS was more than just symbolic. It demonstrated her willingness to contribute alongside ordinary citizens and proved that even royalty was not exempt from the hardships of war. Her time in the ATS also reflected the broader societal changes occurring in Britain as women took on new roles and responsibilities in the workforce and military. VE Day and the princess's public celebration. The end of the war in Europe on the 8th of May 1945, known as Victory in Europe, VE Day, was a moment of national celebration. For Elizabeth, it marked not only the end of a devastating conflict, but also a personal milestone. On the evening of VE Day, she and Princess Margaret were allowed to leave Buckingham Palace and join the crowds of revelers on the streets of London. Disguised in ordinary clothes to blend in with the public, the princesses mingled with jubilant citizens, cheering, singing, and embracing the sense of relief and joy that swept through the capital. Elizabeth would later describe the experience as one of the most memorable nights of her life, a rare opportunity to connect with her people on an intimate level. The lasting impact of wartime service. Elizabeth's experiences during World War II had a profound and lasting impact on her character and approach to leadership. The war instilled in her a deep appreciation for duty, resilience, and the importance of unity in the face of adversity. She saw firsthand the sacrifices made by soldiers, factory workers, nurses, and ordinary citizens, and this understanding shaped her lifelong commitment to public service. Her time in the ATS, in particular, reinforced her belief in leading by example. Throughout her reign as queen, Elizabeth consistently demonstrated a hands-on approach to her role, whether through her involvement in charitable work, her dedication to public engagements, or her ability to connect with people from all walks of life. Her wartime service also strengthened her connection to veterans and military organizations, which she continued to support throughout her life. The influence of King George VI. The reign of King George VI was one of the most pivotal in British history, not only for its role in guiding Britain through World War II, but also for its profound influence on his eldest daughter, Princess Elizabeth. His reign, marked by resilience, duty, and an unwavering sense of responsibility, imparted essential lessons that would shape Elizabeth's character and leadership style as Queen Elizabeth II. Observing her father's journey from an uncertain monarch to a revered symbol of national stability provided Elizabeth with a blueprint for her future role. A reluctant king thrust into leadership. When King George VI ascended the throne in 1936 following the abdication of his brother, Edward VIII, he did so reluctantly. Albert Frederick Arthur George, known to his family as Bertie, was a shy and introverted man who had never expected to become king. His speech impediment, a severe stammer, compounded his lack of confidence, making his assumption of the crown a daunting prospect. However, under the guidance of his supportive wife, Queen Elizabeth, later the Queen Mother, and with the help of his speech therapist Lionel Logue, George VI gradually overcame his personal struggles. His courage and determination to fulfill his role despite these challenges were not lost on his daughter. Elizabeth witnessed firsthand how her father transformed adversity into strength, instilling in her an understanding that perseverance and self-discipline are key traits of effective leadership. A role model of duty and responsibility. One of the most enduring lessons Elizabeth learned from her father was the importance of duty. George VI viewed his role as king not as a privilege, but as a responsibility to his people. During the Second World War, he chose to stay in London despite the bombings of the Blitz, a decision that demonstrated solidarity with the British people. The royal family's presence at Buckingham Palace, even after it was bombed, served as a powerful symbol of national unity and resilience. Elizabeth observed her father's unwavering commitment to his responsibilities during this turbulent period. He worked tirelessly to support Britain's war effort, making speeches to boost morale, visiting troops, and meeting with political leaders to ensure the country remained steadfast in its resolve. His example taught her that being a monarch meant more than fulfilling ceremonial duties. It required active involvement in the well-being of the nation. Throughout her reign, Elizabeth embodied this lesson by maintaining a busy schedule of public engagements, charitable work, and diplomatic visits. Even in times of personal difficulty, she demonstrated the same sense of obligation her father had shown, ensuring that her duty to the crown and the country remained her top priority. The power of compassion and empathy. George VI was known not only for his sense of duty, but also for his compassion and empathy, qualities that deeply influenced Elizabeth's approach to her role. He understood the importance of connecting with his subjects on a personal level and often showed genuine concern for the welfare of others. His visits to bombed-out neighborhoods during the Blitz were more than mere symbolic gestures. They reflected his sincere desire to uplift and comfort those affected by the war. Elizabeth inherited this empathetic approach and applied it consistently throughout her reign. From meeting survivors of natural disasters to visiting hospitals and care homes, she made it a priority to connect with ordinary people and listen to their stories. Her ability to put people at ease and show genuine interest in their lives became a hallmark of her public appearances. The Queen's dedication to service organizations and charities further demonstrated her compassionate nature. Much like her father, she understood that the monarchy could play a vital role in providing hope and support to those in need. Her patronage of numerous charitable organizations was a testament to the values instilled in her during her formative years. Adaptability and modernization. While George VI was often seen as a traditionalist, his reign also highlighted the importance of adaptability. Faced with a rapidly changing world, he recognized the need for the monarchy to evolve in order to remain relevant. His willingness to embrace new technologies, such as radio broadcasts, allowed him to connect with the British people in ways that previous monarchs had not. His speeches, particularly during the war, were broadcast to millions, reinforcing his role as a symbol of national unity. Elizabeth took this lesson to heart and, throughout her reign, demonstrated a keen understanding of the need for the monarchy to adapt. She embraced television, allowing her coronation in 1953 to be televised, a groundbreaking decision at the time. This not only modernized the image of the monarchy, but also helped foster a closer connection between the royal family and the public. In later years, Elizabeth continued to embrace technological advancements, from delivering televised Christmas messages to engaging with the public through social media platforms. Her ability to balance tradition with modernization ensured that the monarchy remained an enduring and respected institution. Humility and resilience. Perhaps one of the most important lessons Elizabeth learned from her father was the value of humility. Despite his position as king, George VI remained modest and unpretentious. He was known for his simple tastes and down-to-earth demeanor, qualities that endeared him to his subjects. He often attributed his success as a monarch to the support of his family and advisors. Acknowledging that leadership was a collective effort, Elizabeth adopted this humble approach, recognizing that her role as queen was not about personal glory, but about serving the nation. Throughout her reign, she maintained a sense of modesty, often crediting the efforts of others and focusing on the collective achievements of the country. Her humility allowed her to navigate difficult periods with grace and dignity, earning the respect of both her subjects and world leaders. George VI's resilience in the face of personal and national challenges also left a lasting impression on Elizabeth. His ability to overcome his stammer and lead the nation through the hardships of war demonstrated that even in moments of vulnerability, strength could be found. This resilience became a defining characteristic of Elizabeth's reign as she guided Britain through periods of political, economic, and social change. Family as a source of strength. George VI placed great emphasis on the importance of family, and his close relationship with his wife and daughters was central to his ability to fulfill his duties. The supportive and loving environment he created within the royal household provided Elizabeth with a stable foundation from which to grow. She witnessed how her parents' strong partnership and mutual respect enabled them to navigate the challenges of kingship together. As Queen Elizabeth continued this tradition, drawing strength from her family while also fostering strong relationships with her children and grandchildren. Her commitment to family values was evident in her dedication to both her public and private roles, demonstrating that a successful monarch could balance the demands of the crown with the importance of familial bonds. Love and duty. Marriage to Philip, 1947. The marriage of Princess Elizabeth to Philip Mountbatten on the 20th of November, 1947, marked not just the union of two young hearts, but also a pivotal moment in British royal history. Their love story, which began in the mid-1930s, flourished amid the backdrop of World War II and Britain's post-war recovery. However, like many royal unions, their marriage came with its own set of challenges, requiring them to balance personal affection with the demands of duty. The relationship between Elizabeth and Philip would go on to shape the monarchy for decades, laying the foundation for a partnership rooted in mutual support, sacrifice, and resilience. A chance encounter and blossoming love. Princess Elizabeth first met Philip Mountbatten, then Prince Philip of Greece and Denmark, in 1934 at the wedding of Philip's cousin, Princess Marina of Greece, to Prince George, Duke of Kent. At the time, Elizabeth was only 8 years old and their encounter was brief. It wasn't until 1939, during a visit to the Royal Naval College in Dartmouth, that their connection truly began to form. Philip, then an 18-year-old naval cadet, was tasked with escorting the 13-year-old princess and her sister Margaret around the campus. Elizabeth was reportedly smitten from the start. Tall, athletic, and charismatic, Philip made a lasting impression on the young princess. The two began exchanging letters, and over the years their correspondence deepened their bond. Philip's naval service during World War II, which saw him posted in various parts of the world, meant they were often separated. However, their connection remained strong, and by the time the war ended in 1945, it was clear to both of them that they wanted to marry. Overcoming family and public scrutiny. Despite their mutual affection, Elizabeth and Philip's path to marriage was not without obstacles. Philip's background presented several challenges. Although he was a member of European royalty, his family had faced hardship and exile. Born in Greece, Philip and his family were forced to flee the country when he was a child following the overthrow of the Greek monarchy. His early life was marked by instability, and his sisters had married German aristocrats, some of whom had connections to the Nazi regime, a sensitive issue in post-war Britain. Moreover, Philip's brash and independent personality raised concerns among some members of the royal household. His straightforward manner and modern views were seen as potentially clashing with the traditional expectations of the monarchy. Queen Elizabeth, later the Queen Mother, reportedly had reservations about the match, fearing that Philip might not be the ideal companion for a future queen. Nevertheless, King George VI supported the marriage, recognizing the strength of Elizabeth's feelings and the stability Philip could provide. To address some of these concerns, Philip renounced his Greek and Danish royal titles, converted from Greek Orthodoxy to Anglicanism, and adopted the surname Mountbatten, anglicizing his identity to better fit within the British royal family. In July 1947, the engagement was officially announced, and the public largely welcomed the news. In a country recovering from the hardships of war, the royal wedding was seen as a symbol of renewal and hope. The wedding of the century. On the 20th of November, 1947, Princess Elizabeth and Philip Mountbatten were married in a grand ceremony at Westminster Abbey, attended by royalty and dignitaries from around the world. The event was broadcast on radio to an estimated 200 million people, providing a moment of joy for a nation still facing post-war rationing and economic challenges. Despite the grandeur of the occasion, the wedding also reflected the frugality of the time. Elizabeth's wedding dress, designed by Norman Hartnell, was made using silk purchased with ration coupons. The gown featured intricate embroidery and symbolic motifs, such as wheat ears and flowers, representing growth and prosperity. The simplicity and elegance of the ceremony resonated with the public, who saw the royal couple as embodying the values of duty, resilience, and modesty. A supportive partnership. From the beginning of their marriage, it was clear that Elizabeth and Philip's relationship would be a partnership built on mutual respect and understanding. Philip, who had a successful career in the Royal Navy, initially continued his naval duties while Elizabeth focused on her role as a princess and new mother. Their first son, Charles, was born in 1948, followed by Anne in 1950. However, their lives changed dramatically in 1952, when King George VI passed away and Elizabeth ascended the throne at the age of 25. Philip was forced to abandon his naval career to support his wife in her new role as queen. The decision was a significant personal sacrifice, as Philip had excelled in the Navy and had ambitions of further advancement. Despite the challenges, Philip embraced his role as consort with determination and dedication. His strong-willed nature and independent spirit allowed him to carve out a unique position within the monarchy. While he often remained in the background during public engagements, he played a critical role behind the scenes, offering advice and acting as a confidant to the Queen. His modernizing influence helped reform certain aspects of the monarchy, such as streamlining its operations and introducing initiatives aimed at making the royal family more accessible to the public. Challenges and adjustments. Like any marriage, Elizabeth and Philip's relationship faced its share of difficulties. The pressures of public life, coupled with the demands of the monarchy, often put their marriage under strain. Philip's adjustment to the limitations of his role as consort was not always smooth. Known for his candid nature and occasional gaffes, he sometimes found himself at odds with royal protocol. Additionally, the couple had to navigate periods of separation due to their respective responsibilities. However, their shared commitment to duty and their deep-rooted affection for one another helped them overcome these challenges. They maintained a private life away from the spotlight, spending time at their country estates and engaging in shared interests, such as horse riding and outdoor pursuits. Legacy of their union. The marriage of Elizabeth and Philip endured for more than 7 decades, making it one of the longest-lasting royal unions in history. Their partnership was characterized by mutual support, with Philip often describing himself as the Queen's strength and stay. Their ability to navigate the complexities of public life while maintaining a strong personal bond set an example for future generations of the royal family. Philip's death in 2021 marked the end of an era, but the legacy of their marriage continues to influence the monarchy. Together, they modernized the institution, ensuring its survival in a rapidly changing world. Their relationship, built on love, duty, and resilience, remains a symbol of enduring commitment and service.